Um, it was working before when I tried. Do you mind just doing it for me? Thank you. If you can just turn and go to the next slide. I am the face of this. So the team that did deliver it. So while it sits within my portfolio, and I'm certainly the sponsor of the project and sat in all the working groups and through our governance structure, the person that actually delivered the play space and did all of the work has actually left Bayside. But I have included a video of him later talking about the playground, and that's Andrew Shannon. And I'd just like to mention him at the start of each of these sessions, because without him and his input, we wouldn't have had the fantastic playground that we actually have today. So for those of you that don't know Bayside very well, we are a really tiny municipality. We're between some of the really large ones. So in terms of Kingston, Glen Ira and Port Phillip, there's only 102,000 residents within Bayside, with approximately 18,000 of those aged under 18. Now, interesting and a relevant fact, but something I like to throw out there, we actually have more dogs registered in Bayside than we do children under the age of 15. So it really is quite an interesting fact. Within Bayside, there are 61 play spaces, and they range from pocket parks, which basically service the very local community. So you might have two pieces of equipment within that space, all the way up to our regional and district playgrounds, which Thomas Street is one. So they've been designed to not only service the whole municipality, but the surrounding suburbs. So they're fantastic. Now, Bayside is not a rich municipality. So while we have a really high, we have expensive properties. We're in the Golden Mile in terms of Brighton, and we have, some very high levels of employment. We were originally, after amalgamations, in quite a bit of debt. So there had been no investment in any capital for many, many years. So I joined Bayside back in 2009. And for the first few years, we were struggling to get any type of investment into any infrastructure, whether it's sports grounds, pavilions, or anything else. So the play spaces were very sad, very sad. Next, please. So we did some planning in 2014 and 15. We planned for play. We wanted to make sure that moving forward, we had evidence-based research to be able to put up our capital bids each year and be able to make some changes to what were some pretty tired facilities. Now, don't laugh at that funding. I'm still, because we haven't done our 5-year review, we've just been busy doing other projects. This is the money we still have to go out with in terms of delivering our playgrounds. Now, Jenny has blown the surprise, which is absolutely fine because we plaster the amount everywhere. We did end up spending $4.2 million after an initial budget of $1 million. So, yeah, we significantly went higher than what we were supposed to, but the outcome was absolutely sensational. Next, please. Next. So when we started our planning for play, we were really sick of going out into our community and hearing the same feedback. So when we ran a community engagement session, we'd probably have 15, 20 people turn up for each of our spaces, but we were hearing the same things. We're hearing from the neighbours who didn't want anything that made noise. And we spoke to parents or grandparents who just wanted people to play the way they'd always played. So some very, very creative people within our organisation developed what is known as our playground testing program. So this started back in 2015, and we've certainly changed over the years, and I'll go through some of those changes in a moment. But this was a first for us, and our whole intent of this program was going out and making sure that we heard from the kids. We wanted to hear what they had to say. We wanted to hear how they liked to play. Excuse me, how they like to play. So we went out and advertised for this program. So we do have a video, which I didn't embed today, but it's on our website and it is worth having a look. It's terribly acted. One of our open space team is the grumpy man and chasing the kids off the playground. But it is a great representation of playgrounds and how they have traditionally been seen. So in the beginning, we actually spent probably half of our pocket park, which was at $20,000, on an investment into this. So we basically put together packs. So we created a bag. Every playground tester that we recruited ended up with a bucket cap. So it was a very bright lime green. They were fantastic. The kids loved them. They had a bag that had Bayside plastered all over it and some, lots of colour and activity. You can see there, they've all got lanyards, so they were very official looking. And they had a little booklet in the clear pouch at the bottom. So in that booklet, there was a number of pages which basically asked them to go and visit all of the playgrounds that we were planning to renew that year. And they had to tell us what they loved about that playground. So, do you like slides that curl? Do you want to go fast down a slide? What do you want that to look like? Do you like to hang, climb, fly, go through tunnels? What is your preferred way of playing? What's missing? And some of the suggestions, and I'll go through some of the comments later, but it was absolutely adorable. It was one of my favourite parts of the job, was having these booklets returned and reading through them and seeing what the kids said. And a lot of kids used to take photos and actually stick their photo into the book, showing us how they were playing on that playground. So it was a fantastic initiative. And we definitely got the value back on in terms of the investment that we put out there. In providing enough kids to get some really decent feedback. So in our first year, we only had 250 kits available. So we had 250 kids registered very, very quickly. And what we decided to do, because we couldn't give everyone a kit, was we went out to primary schools and actually spoke to grade 3. Grade 3 was the age where we thought we were going to get the most interaction back from those children. And basically, we went in and spoke to the kids and then took them down to their local playground and we played. And we asked them to fill out the books because we did have a lot more books than we did the rest of the kit because the kit itself was quite expensive. Again, spending 45 minutes in a playground with 30 odd kids in a class is so satisfying. And just the feedback was amazing. And they'd be running to me and some of the other staff. And we actually took a counsellor along with us as well. So the counsellors, they're hearing the feedback from the kids. And they would find me no matter where I was in the playground and run up and made sure that I wrote down that, the slide was too slow or the monkey bars were too low. One kid even told me that I'm the right height for those monkey bars, but for him, they need to be much higher. He was probably, he was probably only up to my chest height, but absolutely adorable. So the way we design playgrounds and the way we garnished feedback changed forever. Like we never looked at designing a playground the same way. The problem is we had a fantastic set of ideas, but we had no money. So we were still looking at budgets from 20 grand. Majority of our playgrounds sit in the middle. So in terms of a local or a regional, and, we still only had $125,000 to spend on those playgrounds. So we had to really stretch money and try and get value wherever we could. Next, please. So, excuse me. So we're probably 3 or 4 years into our testing program when we started to design Thomas Street Reserve. By this time, we'd got really fine-tuned in terms of recruiting our testers. We were going into COVID, so we were starting to experience some of the issues around COVID. But we did also with Thomas Street expand what we were trying to deliver to make sure it was fully accessible and inclusive play. So what we found really quickly was that our playground testing had some inherent biases that were unconscious. So we weren't asking the right questions in terms of how do we make a playground fully accessible? And the token accessible parts that we put into playgrounds leading up to that date, such as a connecting path that may or may not have been sealed to the playground and have something at a low reaching level or a bucket swing, was pretty much all we did. And that wasn't going to fly in this playground. Now, we started off with $1 million. So as you can imagine, and you start adding things up, it was very, very challenging for us to be able to deliver what we were trying to achieve in that playground with that budget. Now, in the background, it's a bit hard to see here, but I do have a video later that you'll be able to see what the playground looked like. That's the original. So the people that had designed and built this, that was community-led, they'd actually buried a time capsule. So we had the original plans in there. We knew who did it. So we managed to contact those families and actually get them to re-engage and become part of this process. So it was really exciting. Then we wanted to make sure that we were getting every voice we possibly could and ensuring that we were going not only to our local residents, but people or groups that would come to Bayside if there was a fully accessible and inclusive playground. So that was going to different organisations, it was going to schools, it was going to a whole variety of different people to make sure that we had the correct data to design this playground. And we absolutely changed our booklet. So for this playground, we made it fully accessible. And we asked the questions like when you go to a playground, and we did send them to some of our worst and some of our better ones, which still weren't great, and said, how can you play? Do you play here? Is this accessible? This is a piece of equipment we've put in there. How happy are you with that piece of equipment? And we very quickly found out that we were doing a terrible job. And things needed to change. I think I've touched on everything there except for the community reference group. When I show you a video in a moment of Andrew, he talks about how this group was actually sourced. So we created a group and there was roughly 15 to 20 people in that group. And basically we wanted people who were parents, who were kids, who were carers of people who had accessibility issues, and made sure that we had people who were sight or hearing impaired as well. And then we had a couple of people that just have sensory issues. So we did recruit again and interview people, and we ended up with a fantastic and very, very, very productive group, which can sometimes be very challenging when you're asking people with very different ideas and expectations to come together and create a community asset. So Andrew will talk about that in a moment. And the biggest one for us is just, again, how do we get the councillors to actually give us the money that we need to deliver this playground? So we had to make sure that with universal design in mind, that we were getting the appropriate funding that we needed. Next, please. Thanks. So this is our most recent, the background of this is our most recent playground testing advert. We ended up sort of shifting slightly. So we've now got the Bayside Buccaneers. This was during COVID, where we relied on not being able to get information out to people very quickly. So we did sort of a pirate theme. Some of the feedback that kids were giving to us was, we want a ship, or we want to have rockets, or we want to have this. So we thought we'd tailor this particular program theme to what the kids were telling us. We ended up putting QR codes up at all of the playgrounds. We didn't send out those books. So on average, we would only get a return rate of about 50%. When we went to the schools, we were obviously getting much more because we'd take the books with us. But relying on the community to actually send that back in meant that we weren't getting the data that we needed. So by installing QR codes, and we created a treasure map, and we set clues and sent people to the different playgrounds where they were given a clue to get to that space. Then they were given another clue to find the next QR code within that playground. Our feedback went from 50% to 95%. It was incredible. Of course, being during COVID and people having the ability to just scan their phone, we were getting some very interesting feedback as well. But you can quickly filter that out and just have a laugh or disregard it as you pleased. So in terms of this universal design and getting our councillors on board to start funding our playgrounds differently, we actually went to a number of different playgrounds across Melbourne with our reference group and learnt from our peers. So what did you do well? What worked? What didn't work? What should we be really aware of as we're designing this playground? And we learned some really good lessons. And I think everyone has lessons learned. We have many from this playground. And passing that on and sharing those findings with other councils is really, really important. I now see playground testers at a number of municipalities, which again is also fantastic. And I encourage everyone to do it. The feedback is priceless. And as I said, you'll get a few photos in there as well, and just some lovely feedback. Like, this playground makes me happy because my mummy smiles, or she can sit down, and sometimes they were saying things like she can have a glass of wine where she watches. But yeah, really, really fun stuff. So what we needed to do was actually put ourselves in the shoes of people who had all different types of sensory issues, accessibility, people with, multiple children who are of different ages, and try and determine how we were going to design this playground to cater for everybody. We got out in wheelchairs. So we went to some of our playgrounds that we had designed to be accessible and asked our councillors, our staff, and some of our participants from the reference panel to see how they went. It was a very, very interesting process. We tried crutches. We went out, we put blindfolds on. We had block out speaker, like I can't even, headsets is what the word I'm after. And we tried to just see how we would go in that environment, taking away some of the things that we take for granted. So again, really interesting feedback. We have a fantastic councillor that is super supportive in terms of providing spaces for all abilities. And suddenly our concerns regarding a budget, I won't say disappeared, because I've still got the CEO here saying too much money, but it just meant that we had to apply through the capital program, and what we would normally do was potentially deliver 7 or 8 playgrounds in 1 year, and in this year we only did 2. So it was just a bit of a trade-off to make sure that we got the outcome we needed. Next, please. And can you hit play on the video? So this is, I'm just going to hand over to Andrew for a second, and he'll just walk you through the process in a little bit more detail.
This is our new playground in Thomas Street in Hampton. The playground is built on the site of a previous playground that was built by the local community about 30 years ago. And when it became time to grow and renew the playground, there was a fantastic opportunity for us to look at an all abilities playground, something that the whole of the community could use. Bayside City Council developed a community reference group where we had a group of local parents, some of whom had kids with disabilities, and they helped us develop the designs to emphasise the importance of the park being not just accessible but inclusive.
I jumped at the idea, being a local and having lots of kids, it was important to me that whatever we built was really special and honoured what used to be here. I've got kids aged 4 to 14, and there's something for each of them to do here. My little one loves the flying fox. He'll sit on it all day if I let him. I've got girls that love playing in the hamster wheel, and they love trying out the parkour course. There's things that spin, there's things that swing, there's things that fly all over the place, and the kids just love it.
We've got a DJ booth.
Aided by the neighbours.
We have a seniors exercise area, which is designed really for flexibility and balance. Around the park there's a 500-metre walking path. It's a chance for people to get out in nature and get a little bit of exercise along the way. Within the toilet block, we have a special area that's called a changing places, and that provides a hoist and a change bed and a shower, so that for kids or adults with a disability, there's an area where they can go to the toilet and change if they need to. You'll find a series of sculptures that have been commissioned through Arts Access Victoria that have been modelled by people with a disability. Dotted through the park are some small plaques. They actually have the alphabet on them in both Braille and Auslan. So it's a chance for people to see that there are different ways that people in our community communicate.
When Sam was asked to open the park as his role as Young Citizen of the Year, we were so proud.
I think that's really important in our society for everyone to be included and everyone to be able to have fun.
My name's Frankie, and this is my brother Iggy.
Hi.
What's your favourite part of the park?
I like cow.
Not everyone will use the equipment in the same way, but there'll be something for everyone to do and explore. We heard from local people that they really wanted to retain a very natural, leafy character to the park. We've retained all of the natural vegetation that was here, and we've been able to put in about 50 new trees and about 2,500 other plants.
I'm pretty proud of what the council's put together and built. It still honours the original theme and the original thought, and I think that the community really appreciates that, and felt really proud to have been a part of that.
Yes, we have had people stuck at the top of that tower. So we very quickly learnt about adding emergency access to that area because we did have people climb up there and get stuck, and we had to be able to get up there and rescue. But again, the person when they came out was saying how amazing it was climbing so high, and they weren't at all scared while they were stuck into in that tiny little turret at the top. Oh, yeah, sorry. Now, I'll just quickly say what we did here is we made sure that there was connecting paths to every element. And at that element, there were multiple things that people could do who had accessibility issues. To achieve our universal design, we managed to get 80% of the equipment being able to be accessed by everyone. It encouraged extended stays. So we built barbecues, we put in shelter, we've got the changing places and the general toilets, there's seats everywhere, and there's reasonable public transport to that area. And we wanted to just make sure that it was all engaging play. So a lot of water play, the DJ booth, lots of different sights and sounds. Now, I'll just quickly show you one last video, and it is a time lapse. So what we did and what we do with every project now is we put a time-lapse camera in, and we really want to remind ourselves of where we came from and where we've come to. So I'll just quickly show this. It's really quick. We left it up a little longer than we normally would. So the first weekend we were open, you'll start to see the numbers of people that came through the playground. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Sarah. I don't know about you, but I want to go play there. I want to do all those things. That DJ booth is next level. So just moving along, next up we have Katie Cudal from the City of Melbourne. So Katie's a landscape architect with a focus on public realm strategy and delivery, working across local government and private practice over the last decade. As the principal landscape architect and design manager at the City of Melbourne, she currently leads a multidisciplinary team of industrial designers, architects, urban designers, and landscape architects to design, manage, and deliver the city's spaces. So, do you want to come on up, Katie? Thank you very much.
I'm a little bit afraid of this clicker, so we'll see how we go. So thank you very much. I'm feeling very grateful and inspired to be in a company of so many wonderful speakers and professionals. So I think when this initial idea was approached to me about doing a presentation on Royal Park Play Space and Southbank Boulevard, I did get a little bit defensive and was really resisting the urge to reset the agenda and to really think that we as City of Melbourne have produced and built and delivered a number of other play spaces within this time frame. Oh, wait, does this work? Oh no, just going to try all these buttons. Oh, oh no, I've got to, oh, wait. Yeah, it did work. There you go. So I think as I reflected on these projects side by side, in fact, they're spaced 10 years apart. And actually, there's something to be said about two projects, these two projects in comparison. Within 10 years, I guess they are an inspiration and hopefully a precedent to many other projects. And I guess they do have a number of synergies, as you can kind of see visually within this slide. So I decided to rename this presentation 10 Years of Learning, One Rock at a Time. So in the spirit of 10 years, and I will be quick, so these are some of the stats that we've got. I had the city data team collate for me. Our population has increased. We're now living closer together on top of each other and in much smaller and compact living situations, and most without private open space. And as the city continues to really invest incrementally in our public spaces to increase the opportunity for more space, parks and greenery, we're not delivering at the pace of our population growth. So why is play important? I'm sure a lot of you have already seen Article 31 of the UN Convention Rights for Children. I think as a local government employee myself, this is deeply important. We as government employees have a responsibility to continue to advocate and create spaces that support the long-term developmental needs of children. So I think back to my 10 years side by side, a lot's happened, and in particular, we've had a lockdown. And so I did a bit of a Google of both projects to kind of highlight the most controversial thing that happened throughout the life cycle of the project. And you can kind of see as I start sharing my learnings that a lot can happen in 10 years. Times change, people change, and within that span, we've all got the opportunity to change our mind and our attitudes. So return to Royal Park, I think most of you might not remember, but this was done approximately more than 10 years ago, and it was one of the more early, this was when nature play was starting to be introduced in Melbourne in particular. And part of learning how to do something new, we really took it upon ourselves to read, to research, and with that we developed this very complex matrix to make sure we're meeting every single developmental need for children aged from 0 to 12. And on top of that, there's the 3 pillars of play: physical, cognitive, and social play. I'm sure there's you've all seen a number of other configurations of this particular model. And I think what we've learned over this time between Return to Royal Park and Rocks on Wheels is actually a mound meets these needs. So do rocks. And I think what we've also learned is people bring play to spaces. Like there's already been such wonderful insights around playfulness, but people layer play into the spaces, people create play, and actually play doesn't need to be very expensive. So I think this is a bit of a personal reflection. I won't go into this in too much detail. So, and I'm aware a lot of you had a lockdown activity. Mine was in ceramics. And I think reflecting on my own journey with working with clay, I think there's a lot of experience, a lot of learnings that can actually be applied to how do we lean into risk play and lean into the unknown to create more opportunities. So I think this was a bit of my own lockdown insights, and hopefully this can provide some insights into the process of nature play. And I guess if any of you have tried to document a nature's play space, each rock is different, each element is different, and to put that in a construction documentation package, you just can't. So I think these are some of my learnings from working with natural materials. And in particular, I've focused on soil, clay, and rocks. So I think each one in its own right is extracted from the earth. They are unpredictable in nature and reactive to moisture, evaporation, and heat. Each process of working with a natural material can only be realised through the process of making. And because of that, the outcome is deeply personal and unique to the maker. So with this approach in mind, these are the drawings, the working drawings that were used for Return to Royal Park and Rocks on Wheels. And these not only were construction drawings, they were also used to inform some of the site set out and design intent on site. Selection of rocks at the quarry for Return to Royal Park. And this was Rocks on Wheels. So I kind of mentioned that a lot of the process was realised through making. This is what Mike was doing on site, positioning, iterating, and the actual final product wasn't realised until the very last minute. So the next point I wanted to make, and I know this has been touched on quite a few times, so I won't indulge in it. If anyone here has worked in government, which I think most people have in this room, it's often encumbered by multiple gateways and stakeholder approvals, and each one is quite complex in nature. It's sometimes really challenging to advocate for projects, and I've highlighted Rocks on Wheels and Southbank Boulevard for being quite innovative for their times. In like a kind of setting that's always a little bit more conservative and a little bit more risk adverse. And I think one of the key learnings from these two projects is it's really important not to lose sight of the vision, and it's really important to bring people along the journey with a good story. So this is Return to Royal Park, and what really inspired and was the central pivotal point for this project was to really honour the Wurundjeri 7 seasons, and this was done with permission from the elders. Oh gosh, sorry, I don't know how to go back. Oh, there you go. The clicker works. And you can kind of see that this narrative has kind of carried on at all different scales and all different textures to bring this kind of excitement at all levels. And Rocks on Wheels, this Mike really heavily critiqued City of Melbourne, and he's a Sydney-sider, and his insight to Melbourne was that we have quite a monolithic approach to using bluestone. And this is kind of positioned next to Diana Arbus's 1962 print, Disneyland scene, also called Rocks on Wheels. And I think within Rocks on Wheels, I think if you've been on site, every element is bluestone or applied bluestone. You have the boulders, which are extracted from the Port Fairy quarry. You've got these little sculptural cores that are kind of recycled out of the process. And you've also got this softball pavement that looks like bluestone that's actually approved impact attenuating softball. So have a go. It is a little bit confusing when you do enter the site, but I assure you it is very safe. And kind of my last learning, I probably should have put more on this particular slide, but this is some of the feedback we got from children really appreciating the play space. And I think one of the key pieces of feedback was to include a toilet. But this actually isn't my point for the last slide, which I know a lot of presentations have touched on this today, is I think if you come to either of these spaces, rain or shine, you will see not only children and families using the space, you see a cross-section of diversity and community members, which means, and to the point about population increase, it's something that our open spaces and playgrounds need to be more inclusive and to work much more harder. And I think in my mind, that's one of the biggest successes of both these spaces. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Katie. The depth of thought that goes into the design, it just blows your mind in terms of for someone who just looks at a play space and goes, that's kind of cool to play on. So I really appreciate you sharing that depth of thought in the design. Moving along, I'd like to introduce Ellen Mitchell. Ellen is from Melbourne Water, and she's an ecologist and the manager of service programs, land and catchments, sorry, tongue-tied, at Melbourne Water. Her career aim is to help people connect to nature. So she's going to have a chat with us about reimagining creeks and urban waterways. Over to you, Ellen.
Will the clicker work though? Thanks, Michelle. We have very long titles at Melbourne Water, but the basic gist is my team at Melbourne Water, we have quite a broad portfolio looking at both our land and catchments. So we do everything from protecting our water supply catchments, which means keeping people out, right through to the land activation in our urban environments where we're trying to activate for more community participation and involvement. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Yep. Oh yeah, middle button, there we go. So I'm going to start at a high level and talk about some of the programs that we're running and some of the bigger issues we're facing through to a particular case study of a N=1. So as we know, the availability and quality of open space is really under pressure within the Melbourne area. It's impacted by a range of factors, including, climate issues, population densities, urbanisation and urban growth. So, in 2018, Melbourne hit 5 million people, and that was 11 years earlier than predicted. So one of the things that Melbourne Water has recognised is within the urban growth boundary, we're the second biggest land owner within that after the Crown. So we've got a really great opportunity to look at our land and how we can maximise that for community benefit. So a lot of what we look at now is around how can we provide access to the community to that open space. So we also manage over 25,000 kilometres worth of waterways and about 1,400 kilometres worth of drains, of which I'm going to talk to some of Neil's work today, who couldn't be here. So let's see if I can get this to go again. Oh, yeah. Just some context. So Melbourne Water is a water authority. Every 5 years, we go through a process where we need to put business cases up to the Essential Services Commission, and as part of that process, and that's to just to let them know how we want to spend the 5 years worth of funding. As part of that, we do a lot of community consultation, and in the last round, which is for the current period we're in of 2021 to 26, we did a lot of engagement with both our residential community customers and our business customers, and they across the board said that they'd be willing to pay more to activate land for community benefits. So we were actually able to get $40 million in capital investment through that feedback we got from the community. So what we did was develop an amenity and needs framework to look at, well, where would we activate our land and what type of activation will we do? So we created with a couple of consultants amenity needs framework where we did a range of scoring and then mapped that onto a bit of a heat map here that looked at things like health and socioeconomic needs, the equitable distribution of open space, population densities, population growth, the CFA's social disadvantage index, household density, access to open space and others. And came up with this map which highlights some areas where there's some hotspots that really need some more open space within, I guess, Melbourne Water's remit of areas of land. Yep. Yeah. So one particular example I just want to give now is around our retarding basins, and it's through the mapping work we found around the Glenroy, Faulkner, Broadmeadows area, there was a high need for more open space. So we've got an opportunity to look at activating retarding bases within Glenroy. So retarding basin is an area that fills up with water when there's a flooding event, so then it doesn't go into people's houses or other areas. So Glenroy being within Marybeck, Marybeck identified in their council health and wellbeing profile that in the Glenroy area, it's one of the highest, has one of the highest average distances between households and a playground. So for us, that was a really good opportunity to look at where we currently have closed retarding basins and how we can open them up and activate them for the community. So the concept design on the right here is looking at an area at Box Forest Road in Glenroy, and the top photo is Joe Bush, who's just recently left Melbourne Water to go to Marybeck, so yay for them. Doing some engagement with one of the local schools in the area. What we'd be looking through this particular design, so currently it's just this grassy open space with big fence around it, and it's wrapped around with some residential areas and the cemetery at the back of it. So it's a really good opportunity. And what we're looking through in the design, though, is for very much natural play spaces for the local community and particularly for children as well. So we're not looking to do playgrounds at all, but having that, that natural escape and that sense of, hiding from your parents kind of thing. So this is some work we're working on right now in that activation for retarding basins. I'll just go through a couple of Neil's work on the Reimagining Your Creek program as well. So this is kind of our flagship activation program that we've had for quite a few years now at Melbourne Water. And Reimagining Your Creek program is very much about transforming stormwater drains and creeks into natural waterways and open space. So there's a few examples here of Arnold's Creek, which is in Melton West in the west of Melbourne, and Blind Creek, which is in Boronia in the outer east of Melbourne. So these were looking at areas where we've had underground drainage pipes, which were all the rage back in the day. Great engineering solutions. Let's bury all the water, put it in a pipe, and then it'll flow quickly away. But that has had quite significant impacts on the natural landscape. So what we've found is there's a really good opportunity to what's known as daylight these pipes. So you crack them open and turn them back into natural waterways. And it's actually a really good function for the local landscape. So there's some really good opportunities to increase habitat for animals, general well-being, amenity really improves, and you get really good stormwater results from it too, with you've got a lot of stormwater treatment as well. So for both of those areas, they've been activated just recently. There's a couple of videos on the Melbourne Water website if you want to have a look at those. But it's a fantastic opportunity for the entire community and particularly children as well. There's been a lot in the designs that allow children to go down to the waterways and access and interact with nature in that way. One of the more recent ones that I can talk to a bit more directly, because it's not far from my place, is Torella Creek, which is out in Croydon, in the outer east of Melbourne. So I just want to highlight as well that we can't do these programs and projects without the support of our partners, so particularly local government and state and federal funding as well. So Torella Creek is a great example of working closely with Maroondah Council. Hi, Saloshi. So Torella Creek consisted of a very open grass area with a big pipe underneath where all of the water went, and a wetland as well, which was not functioning very well at all. And there was a rickety old bridge that was becoming quite unsafe for the community. So it's surrounded by kind of commercial and factory areas as well. And what the Reimagine Your Creek program has done is completely redesigned it, created new wetlands, opened up what was an underground pipe, and the installation of some new bridges and infrastructure as well, which has just had an amazing result for the community. And we've now got a lot of the business and factories want to spin around. So where currently it's the back of them, looking to integrate into that environment as well. So that's been quite an amazing project and a great case study on what Melbourne Water's been able to do in terms of activating these pieces of land for a multitude of benefits. So just onto my case study of N=1. This here is Jackson. He's 5 now, and he's my son. And we've been coming to Torella Creek since he was a little tot. And I just thought I'd talk you through some of the stuff from looking at through the lens of a child on what a program like this has done for kids in terms of the way the space is used now. So through the creation of the Reimagine Your Creek, there's lots of infrastructure, as we've seen through other presentations today, with stepping stones and things like that allow kids to, do that risk-based play. The other great thing about an area like this is it is also a retarding basin, so it holds a lot of water after a flood. So you can see the difference on the bottom right-hand photo. That was after some flooding late last year. So in the kind of the middle bottom picture, there's a bird hide in the background, and that bird hide is almost completely covered in water. And it's a really good opportunity to talk to kids about what does that mean? Why does that happen? And where does the water come from and where does it go? And I was talking to Jackson this morning about that I was coming to present and talk about, the experiences we have down here. And he said, oh, yeah, and the birds can sit on the rails when it's really, really wet, and then they can go back down, once it's dry again. So we have a lot of discussions around what happens to the plants when they're covered in water and why do those plants survive? So it's a really good opportunity to get kids back to these natural play spaces and talk about how the environment works and, how the water cycle and is meant to naturally function across a landscape. Some of the other really good benefits that come out of these projects is because we have great involvement with the council. We participate in National Tree Planting Day. It's a massive community event. The first year we did it last year, I think the council were blown away. We got the whole lot planted in like a half an hour. But it's a great opportunity for intergenerational experiences. So you've got the kids, you've got parents, you've got grandparents all out there together planting those plants, and the kids can really take ownership over seeing those plants and the vegetation growing over time and just seeing the changes. And from my perspective, that's ultimately what this work is about, is helping children take ownership over their spaces, becoming those environmental stewards for the long term, because this will be their environment, whether they'll bring their kids in the future. So that was my N=1 case study. Just finally, I just want to acknowledge a lot of the work that Neil's been doing with Reimagining Your Creek. And these are some of the areas that we're focusing on, both for his work in Reimagining Your Creek program and also our other land activation programs. So I forgot to mention earlier, some of the other land activation we're doing is both activation of retarding basins, a lot of our pipe tracks where we've either got sewer or water pipes underground, looking at connection points. That's been a big part of focus of all of our activation programs, is how do they connect up to local amenities. And we have a paddling access program as well. So looking at how do we create safer points of entry to waterways where people might want to do kayaking, canoeing, etc. So we're looking at how do we find different funding models as well to invest more in these programs, and also leverage off other bigger infrastructure projects that are going on as well across the metropolitan Melbourne area. Working a lot with council and community, working with our traditional owners to make sure that their voice is heard in the design and the implementation of those programs. and looking at, how do we make this just as a business as usual kind of design for Melbourne Water. So when there's asset renewals or new assets going in, that we're looking at the end product, not just the asset itself, but how does it integrate with the broader landscape? And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Alan. That was wonderful, and I love the idea of the activation of waterways. Like, for example, I'm from down Geelong Way. You've got Barwon River there, but there is so few access points to Barwon River, whether it be through town or once you get out of town, there's so few access points, and it's such a missed opportunity. So I really love that's been considered. So we're about to wrap up shortly, but we're going to do a Q&A. So Andrew, do you mind moving some of the chairs into just a little semicircle here, and we'll get all of our presenters to come and take a seat. Yep, beautiful. Excellent. Rightio. So I'm just going to scatter a couple of microphones along here so you can pass them on. When you want to speak, just turn it on. Switch in. There, excellent. Righto, so the way we're going to work this is just for the sake of people online, we want to make sure that they can hear. So I'll start with any questions that we've got from inside this room. If you just sing out your question, I'll repeat it. And we can get some questions done. So you can either ask a question to the whole panel or you can ask a question to individuals. So anyone got any questions in this room? No. Andrew's always going to have a question. Yep, you can. Yep.
Is that indicating that we're starting to head and edge towards where your original model and idea was, where we should be heading?
So I'm just going to repeat that question. So this is a question from Andrew Knight from OB to Tim. Just asking the question about, after digesting all the information that's been presented today, are we headed in the right direction? I don't think your microphone's on, Tim. Just
Oh,
yeah, beautiful.
sorry about that.
Thank you.
So lots of encouraging things. I mean, the Melbourne Water project, that's a really good example for me of what I talked about with win-wins and also being opportunistic. I didn't dwell on that very much, but I think it's a really important takeaway. We're not going to go into the mainstream with these ideas overnight. So anyone in this room who wants to make progress, look at those projects that are at the point where you can get involved and make a difference. And we saw that, I think, on that scheme, but also on some of the park playground schemes. I guess I'm wondering if there's a central catalyst yet, or in a way that I've seen in some other cities. But that, I mean, Melbourne is a big city, so that might be too much to ask. And also, there's a question around political and kind of capital that there might be. So you look at Paris, or you look at Barcelona, or you look at Tirana in Albania. Those are all cities where the mayor of the city took this idea on. And so that sometimes can really give you lift off. So I'll leave that. Thank you.
Very true, very true. Any other questions from in here, in the middle here?
you want to make a difference to families living with disability, be better off spending 800 grams plus for the difference in the local parks and you know, big ego playgrounds, and I'm including ourselves in this, please don't worry. Just wondering whether any or all of you have a response to that, because I think there's been a discussion about value, and it's great to see some research into what do you get for the money. Because honestly, I think a lot of people don't want to be in a big park with 2,000 people. They want to be there with a few people and have a green, peaceful experience. So just wondered if anyone had any thoughts about that.
Excellent. I will try and rephrase that. That was from Mary Jevons. Just a question speaking about money and value versus access and inclusion, and do we want to be putting a lot of money into the big all singing, all dancing, whereas some people just want that smaller experience? So is there anyone on the panel that wants to have a chat about that?
Start if you like. I think we need a little bit of everything. You know, we need to have diversity. So we need spaces that are really close to people's homes. That might just be a local space without many amenities or facilities that can be beautiful as a nature, you know, experience. So even the little places that don't have the space for any amenities, I think are often neglected or not really built to their, you know, optimal, because they're not really maintained. They haven't got the trees or the gardens or whatever, which is a little small place can have huge value if it's really maintained and designed well. So I think we need those places as well as, you know, your big Thomas Street places. Obviously, not all places are going to be like Thomas Street, but it's good to have those as well. So, like everything, we need a diversity in that places. And not every place can meet the needs of everybody, but I think every place can be attractive and beautiful, and I think that should be our goal. Because if it's appealing and attractive, then people are going to get benefit from it, even if it's to go and sit and enjoy the tranquility and gain mental health benefits.
Regulations, so we had a bit of input into our playground improvement plan and some of our playgrounds within Bayside. So Bayside is very much based on a precinct planning process. So we have playgrounds within 500 metres of the house, so people can walk to those spaces and make them their home and not be far. Absolutely don't need to spend that huge amount of money. I think Thomas Street had a lot of infrastructure added into it. There was a lot of money spent in terms of plants and irrigation and pump work under that system. We did do our designs badly initially, but we really didn't focus on things that would get people to come to the park, their local park. But we do know that that's a preference of most people. The other thing that was really lacking in our planning was shade. So these tiny little parks, which are fantastic and everyone values locally, didn't have shade. So no one was coming to those parks because it was too hard. We're now going back and actually retrofitting those spaces. So I think if you plan it properly and make sure that you get your bang for your dollar, absolutely you can get some really good value for 600,000. I'm just trying to inch our budgets up a little bit more. We will never get another playground like that. But yeah.
Right. Excellent. Was there another question over here? Richard. So Richard, I'm actually just going to give you a microphone. Thanks, Jenny. Just so everyone else can hear exactly what you're saying.
There we go. Jenny, this is for you. I have like 30 questions based on your research. I'll try and bring down one, or the most burning one for me. So you had the two, the A and the B parks in one of your research items in terms of the big difference was the budget, obviously. Besides the budget, were there also, do you feel there were factors around the design? Because I noticed with the second one, the design was kind of just like a bit of a refurbishment. And you'd also spoken about having those, I'm not sure if it was yourself, but in the place-based design, having those kind of like big unique features as well. So when we look at the success of the first park as well, it had kind of more like a keynote, keynote pieces of equipment, which the second one didn't. So I was just wondering, besides the amount of money that was spent between those two parks, reframe my question, what made the first one more successful if it was down to more of a design perspective?
Yeah, I think, and in terms of your first comment that you've got lots of questions, please contact me at any time.
Oh, I will.
So in terms of Park B, my perception is that the playground was a great place, but it really didn't attract new people, additional people to the place because it was quite similar to what was there before. I mean, it was new and maybe different pieces of equipment, but it wasn't attracting other age groups or other groups or what have you. And with the older adult equipment, we know from our observations that at neither park are really well used. The one at Park A had all the supporting amenities, so it's more than just the amenities. It's a lot bigger picture. It's about there's many reasons why people not visit these places. So it's hard to just put it down to just the facilities. So I think we have to remember that. We also did in-depth intercept interviews with participants at the parks, which I think feed back to the Bayside. So there were lots of other factors involved. It's not just design, even though design is critical. I think that's, but it's hard to cover it all. Yeah.
And I guess I've got one question for the entire panel. Has anyone had experience in terms of increasing young adult and teen access to parks? Because that was obviously the one where that was the one group that seemed resistant to an increase. So I was wondering, across the board, is there anything that's being done in playgrounds or play spaces or active spaces, which is increasing young adult attendance and use?
Yeah, we have done that, and that's a comment with Bayside. Even remarkable it is, it didn't really have a dramatic increase in teens because it still didn't have a lot of things they want, like cafe. Cafes are really important. It's something we don't do very well at Melbourne. Even if it's a pop-up cafe, it's really important for lots of age groups. But the sports courts and that type of equipment that the teams are wanting still missing at Bayside, so that would be great. It is extra money, but we know what teams want is very different to what 12 and under wants, but they're an age group that are really being neglected in our design, and it's something that is critical because we know that not only for mental and social health, which is super important for this age group, but also has very low levels of physical activities. So, they're a group that we really need to consider.
Quick to respond. I'm really pleased you answer that question because it kind of leapt out as being the one big unsolved issue, I think, for me anyway, from your interventions. I have in the book, Urban Playground, I've got a checklist of kind of 10 things that make parks team friendly, which I stole from Boulder, Colorado, who got a great participatory planning process. There's a guy who's very active on LinkedIn called Matt Roebuck. He's really interested in that kind of informal sport. So the same territory. He like me, he got a grant to go around different countries and check out what's happening. I think he's coming up with some really interesting examples and ideas around that are in this space around teens and in particular teenage girls, which we haven't talked about too much, but even compared to teenage boys, I think teenage girls are like, we don't know, they don't come, we don't know how we can get them to come. And I think that's a really, if we can crack that, I think that would make a big difference. He's certainly very interested in that. So it's Matthew or Matt Roebuck. You'll find him on LinkedIn.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, Jen.
Excellent. Thanks, Richard. Excellent. Just to those who are still with us online, I'm cognizant of time. We are going to wrap up shortly. Does anyone online have any questions for us? Type it into the question box and we will pass it on. Okay. Do you want to come over? I'll just repeat that. A question for Kieran, is Play Streets just being implemented in South Australia, or are other states jumping on board?
Am I working? Yes. Look, so Play Streets they happen across the board, and ideally people just get out and play on their streets that we want to see. But we also appreciate that lots of communities don't have the confidence to do that, and that's where local government can come in and really play a role in supporting that capacity and confidence building piece. It is happening a lot in SA. They do have a more progressive legislative environment to allow that to happen, but we're also seeing it happening in other states. And here in Vic, Merribeck do a fantastic job. They've just released their latest Play Street toolkit for community. Great example for those in Vic. Daniel do a great job as well. And we're finding these pockets of practice are evident all around Australia, but it's just shining a light on those pockets of practice and sharing as we go. So in short, yes. Can I just make an extra observation just while I've got the microphone?
Of course.
I think there's a huge opportunity for local government across the board to think about how we support children and children's play across whole of the community. And I'm at awe of the work that's going on over in New Zealand. So Sport New Zealand invest heavily, and they put a $4 million package in local government to support the conversation that needs to happen, that cross-departmental conversation that needs to happen at local government around how we better support play. And what's coming out of their twos and throws and projects is that they're really looking at how they connect children to schools and support walkability and cycling, and appreciating that children actually play on the way. And so how do we actually build play corridors between where people live and the school environment, and provide play signage and prompts to say, look, our community supports play. And I love playing parks and playgrounds, but I think we actually need to look bigger if we're going to solve this problem.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Kieran, and that goes exactly back to everything Tim's talking about in terms of that neighbourhood-based stuff. Was that it for online, Andrea? Excellent. So there's so much more conversation to be had here. If you want to grab any of us afterwards, have a chat, grab Tim's books. They'll just head over to his website and you can check those out. Time has absolutely flown today, as it generally does. I want to say a big thanks to our presenters, to Tim, to Jenny, Kieran, to Sara, to Katie and Alan. Thank you so much for your input. And you've really given everyone a whole lot of food for thought. Thank you to everyone who's attended here and online. Thank you for your patience with all our technical difficulties. Now, the session has been recorded, so if you've missed anything, you can go back to it. If you want to share it with a work colleague, Outdoors Vic will share the link to the recording in the next newsletter that'll go out. So we'll add you all to that newsletter. If there's any reason why you don't want to be added to the newsletter, just drop them a line at news@outdoorsvictoria.org.au, or just respond to the confirmation emails. Go well, enjoy the sun. And for those of us joining tomorrow with us at the herbarium in the Botanic Gardens, it is going to be amazing, particularly in this weather. I will see you there. If